Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they move through their pain, they realize that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesingrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesingrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to Heroes in Grief, and good to have you with us as always. And so whether you're watching or listening, today I have Karin McLean with me, and Karin and I were connected a while back, I think on Instagram, and she was in the midst of, I don't know if you're still writing at that point, but the book hadn't come out yet, and the book that we're going to talk about today. And Karin's an author, and several other things that applies to what she's doing here and the story that she's got to tell. And she's been a guest on Sandra Champlain's podcast. I saw that. That's awesome. And that's We Don't Die. And also the Coast to Coast version, which is Shades of the Afterlife. And so I've been privileged to be on there as well. And Sandra's great. And so I know she wrote, was it the foreword in your book as well? Was that it, Karin?
The endorsement on the back.
Yeah. Endorsement. Awesome. Where are you located? Where are you at?
I live in Utah in a little town called Linden, which is about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake City.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
We're on different ends of the country, but all good, connected here. So Karin, you have an amazing story. I did read on your website, you know, the synopsis of things and everything. Haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but if you don't mind, tell us the story and then how the book came out of it and what the book's about.
Sure. So back in 1991, I was 18 years old. My family and I went on a little road trip to a town about 4 hours south of where we lived. And about an hour into the drive, my younger sister, 2 years younger than me, so I'm the oldest of 4. And so I was 18, my 16-year-old sister was driving, and she overcorrected, and our car rolled on the freeway. And so me and my youngest sister, who was next to me in the back seats, and our littlest brother, we were all thrown from the car as it rolled. And the only reason I survived is that there happened to be an emergency room doctor behind our car. So he saved my life and my legs. I would have died if he wasn't there. So it was a miracle that he was there. And there were also many, many people who stopped at the scene to help, and so many of them had medical backgrounds. There were like I think 10 RNs at the scene, besides
Wow.
like the ambulance crew. So we already had a lot of help at the scene. And unfortunately, my little brother, didn't make it. And
Wow.
so I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then I was directly transported to a rehab where I lived for the following 3 months because I couldn't walk, so I needed to be in a wheelchair accessible place. And while I was in the rehab, I wrote a poem, and the last line of that poem is "Bright days do come." And so I'd never planned on writing a book. And, the accident was in 1991. And when I published it was May of 2025, so 33 years later. And when I wrote the book, I knew that the title was the last line of that poem, Bright Days Do Come, just because, there are so many storms that we have to deal with in life. But in the end, bright days do come. And I feel like that poem, when I wrote that poem in the rehab, I felt like I was inspired. And the book came about because over the years, my family and I have received incredible signs from my brother. And I love sharing these signs with family and friends. And whenever I share them, along with them knowing my story of the accident and all that, they always tell me, "Oh, you should write a book. You should write a book."
Hmm.
And I've always liked to write, but I just thought, "Oh no, I can't. I don't know the first thing about actually putting a book together, and no, I can't do that." And I didn't know if I wanted to do that. It's the signs are a cool thing to share, but the accident and all that is kind of like reliving it as you're
Yeah.
writing it. And that's what I did experience. Yet it was healing as well. So uh,
I think it's
eventually,
evident. I'm sorry. It's
oh, you're good.
evident the pain, just hearing you talk about it as you were. And I did know how long ago it was. And so just something for people to recognize that that grief is still there. There's no doubt about that. I'm so sorry for what you experienced. And
Thank
it's
you.
horrible. But it evolves and changes, right? And so
Hmm.
at the time, it's interesting. Were you kind of a writer, or did the poem just come, or what was your background at that time with that type of thing? Where'd the poem come from?
Well, I've always liked to write stories like throughout school for assignments and things. And in my senior year, I took a writing class in high school, and we did a lot of poetry, and I had discovered I liked writing poems. So my aunt brought me a journal while I was in the rehab, and I'm so glad that she did because it gave me a way to get my feelings out on paper. And somehow I just started thinking I remember thinking, life is so weird. It you know it one minute it changes from minute to minute. And and even though it's hard right now, there are good days. And it just kind of flowed out of me. Would you like me to read it to you, the poem?
Absolutely. And
Okay,
what is your brother's name?
his name is Brian.
Brian.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
have a picture
And
of him right here. And if you can you
oh,
see
I
that?
can. He's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's him. Yeah.
Ah,
So my poem, I titled it Emotional Weather, and it reads, "Life is like the weather. It changes from day to day. Like the rain, many tears fall. Like, let's see, like the wind, things blow in and out of life. Like a storm, you don't know what to expect. Like the sun. bright days do come.
Mm.
And so it's simple, yet I feel it's profound. And
Mm-hmm.
and so when I did finally decide to start writing, there was no question. I was never wondering, oh, what am I going to call this book? And I just knew it was Bright Days to Come.
Mm.
And I feel like that was my brother, his kind of guidance. It was just like this knowing. And, you know, like I said, people had suggested to me, oh, you should write a book. And I wasn't sure. And, all these years, decades had passed, but I felt this like nudging. And I know it was my brother, Brian. I just felt this nudging to write a book. And it finally got so strong, I couldn't deny it anymore. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I need to either do this or not. So I asked my brother for a sign to let me know if I needed to really do this. And over the years, we've gotten a lot of different types of signs from him, but he was born in 82. And so I've learned to ask him for signs, and I ask him for 82s, and he always comes through. So I said, Brian, if I'm supposed to write this book, give me an 82 within the next couple of days. And that evening, I logged online to pay my credit card bill off, and my balance was 8282, a
Whoa.
double 82, which I knew meant, hell yes, sister, you've got to
Yeah.
write this. So I knew he was telling me to do it and with me during the process. And after I published my book, so the opening month, it published in May, and at the end of each month on Amazon, an author gets a report with how many books have sold that month. And the month of May, my total books sold was 82.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
know that was him saying you did it. And
Wow.
it's been
That
pretty
is so cool.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is. And like 8282 was the amount. That's like, hello, hello, like
Yeah.
putting it on. No doubt about it. That is
Exactly.
awesome.
Yep.
You at 18 years old, when you're 18, you're not thinking about life that way. You know what I mean? And you just got
Yeah.
smacked with it. And,
Yeah.
like, boom, there you go. And that's very profound, the poem that came out of that. It was your realization and everything at that time in your life. And when you're just cruising along at 18, you're not thinking about that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And then bam, all of a sudden your world is totally opened up in a whole different way. And wow. Yeah, that's profound. It really is. Very cool.
Thanks.
So I always ask this of people because I'm wondering, like, where were you at? Like you said about the signs and things to start happening and everything. How long did that take where before you started realizing signs were coming from Brian and understanding that? And where were you at spiritually, like at that time? Did you think about those kind of things early on, like at 18, or what was your thought process at that point?
Yeah. Well, I was raised religious. I was raised in the LDS church. And, I followed all the rules, just kind of went along with uh, what what you were supposed to do and not supposed to do. And I
Hmm.
hadn't really had any spiritual experiences, and I hadn't had any losses of someone very close to me like my brother. So I hadn't
Yeah.
really thought about signs or anything like that. And like I said, I was in the rehab for 3 months learning to walk again. And uh, when I got home, his room was now my sister's room. So I really didn't get that chance to really grieve. Eh, the grief was the whole thing was almost like a surreal nightmare. I
Hmm.
found out that he had died after his funeral, so I didn't get to go to his funeral, which I feel is an important part of the grief process.
Yeah.
And so about 3 months or yeah, about 3 months after I got home. So by now, our accident happened on October 4th in 91. So probably around March, the first sign I got from my brother was I was driving and I immediately felt him next to me in the car, in the front passenger seat. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life, like I'd said. And it was undeniable. I knew he was there. And so I spoke out loud to him and let him know how much I missed him. And just, it felt so good to talk to him again and just to
Hmm.
feel him, really feel his presence. And so that was my first experience with something kind of otherworldly. And then around that same time, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was filled with, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you're groggy, usually groggy, and you
Yeah.
just fall right back to sleep. But I woke up completely alert and my heart felt like it was literally on fire with love. It was just burning. And I had to resist the urge to wake my family up and go tell them how much I loved them. And, I eventually resisted that urge and got back to sleep. And in the morning, I told my mom what had happened, and we both agreed that I had some kind of experience. And through some of the research I've done, I believe it was an out of body experience that I wasn't allowed to remember for whatever reason, but I was allowed to keep that feeling and remember that feeling. So that was my
Right.
very first two experiences before the tangible signs began happening.
Yeah, because for those out there who may not know about out of body or near death experiences, one of the elements that almost everybody comes back with is that they have the most profound experience of love around them that is indescribable, and
Yes.
they all want to stay there and be there and remain in that, because we all as humans probably, if whether they realize it or not, that's what the essence of what we really are. And so yeah, that fire of love as you explain it, that's amazing. Now, you how does this sit with the LDS, like your upbringing in LDS and the Latter Day Saints, for those who may not know, um, within the religious context? How were you? How was that sitting? These experiences within the context of your religion.
Well, the religion, from my knowledge, I had never been taught about connecting with loved ones on the other side. It was more
Mm-hmm.
like, when you die, you go to heaven and you'll be with your family again. And, because I had come so close to death, I, there was I realized, I haven't, I almost died but I never lived. I never really like carved a path on my own. I just kind of followed the path the church gave me. Therefore,
Mm.
I felt like I never really got to choose and make choices for myself and kind of figure life out. I just kind of followed along. And so they held a church meeting on Sundays in the rehab, and my mom let me know about that, and I was really excited, and I went. But as I sat there in my wheelchair in the sermon, I just felt like something that had once been inside of me was now missing. And I realized that, religion and spirituality are two different things.
Huh.
And it didn't feel right to me. And I also felt like, according to the church, because I had followed all the rules, I thought, if I had died during that accident, I would be in a really good place, according to the church's teachings. And I thought to myself, what if I hadn't followed such a straight line? What if I, didn't do that? Do I really believe that I would be in not such a good place? No,
Hmm.
that's not really the God I believe in, one that's going to say, well, if you do this and you do this and you do that, you're going to come back and go to this place. He loves all of us, and no matter what we do, we're unconditionally loved, and that's what unconditional means, you know? And
Yeah.
and I just realized that it was too boxy. I needed to spread. I
Mm.
needed to spread out and explore. And I wanted to know where my brother was. I wanted to know where we're all going. And that's when I started researching near death experiences over time. I did not right away, but eventually I started doing that. And when I started reading about that overwhelming love, I could so relate to that. That's people say it's ineffable. You can't put words to it, and you really
Right.
can't. But the closest I can come is the burning fire in my heart. And I will also say that throughout my life, before that experience and after, I have never felt happier than I did that night, in the middle of the night, waking up alert, feeling happier than I've ever been.
Which is another element of those always, that you're totally fulfilled. You're not wanting of anything. You're totally at peace. And that's the first time I've ever heard it described as a burning heart. That is amazing. I love that.
Oh,
That's great. I feel I believe the same as you. I have a Christian background, and I too believed that I was a Christian pastor, actually, and I felt the same about God. I felt that God was bigger than what I was preaching, even, and that box thing is exactly how I described it too. I did not believe that God can be put in that box, and experience so many things beyond that that led me to where I am now, which I believe the same as you. That I don't believe in this. Literal hell and these type of things and all of that. So from what I've experienced and learned from NDs and OBs and all of those things too, that how people describe and explain the afterlife and everything too. So I believe the same. And that's why I had the question. Actually, I love that everyone comes to me all the time, like, "Oh, I'd love to talk to you about the fact that you were a pastor and now you believe this way." And to me, it's just so matter of fact, like much like you said that I just understood it to be so much bigger, and so um, now seeing verification of that in so many ways, and hearing people like yourself talk about what you experience and what you are experiencing from your brother and everything else. So what about other signs from your brother? What are other kind of awesome things have happened? By the way, when I first mentioned your brother, and I did see the picture of Brian back there, I did not
uh-huh.
notice the lighting that you had from behind there.
Oh,
That's amazing.
yeah, I like to
Love
have
it.
them illuminated.
Yeah,
So,
for those who aren't watching, she has a picture of Brian, and there's beautiful. I don't know, how would you describe them? They're beams coming up from behind him, actually, and it's gorgeous. So yeah, go on
yeah.
YouTube and look at it. It's very cool. Give me some
Thanks.
ideas. So yeah, what about the other
Awesome.
signs? I'd love to hear some other things. What's happened?
Okay. Well, I have a whole bunch.
Good.
I'll start with the very first one. My mom actually got the very first tangible sign, which I was really skeptical of because, like I said, I'd never experienced signs. And so, anyway, she was doodling on a piece of paper while talking on the phone to her brother. And she was sitting at the dining table. Nothing, no water around, nothing. Suddenly, one drop of water lands in the center of her paper. And she looks up, kind of with some bewilderment, and she's going, she told her brother, a drop of water just landed on this paper. It was Brian. I know it's Brian. And her brother said, "Oh, you probably need your roof replaced," which we didn't. We had just replaced it a year earlier. And and she was adamant that it was Brian. Later that day, when we came into contact for the day, she, excitedly came up to me. "I got a sign from Brian. I got a sign from Brian." And she told me what I just told you. And I said, "Oh, are you sure there wasn't glass of water around, or like your nose wasn't running, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something, And she said, no, no, I know it was Brian. And I tried to be as supportive as I could. I just said, oh, well, that's so neat, Mom, but I just thought, I don't know if I've never heard of that as a sign.
Hmm.
And within about a week, I was home alone in my room. I had found a collage that I had put together that was coming unglued. So I sat down, crisscross applesauce in the middle of the floor, grabbed my glue stick and started putting it back together. And one drop of water landed on the center of this artwork. And
Get
I looked up
out.
just like my mom was. And I was, that is when I became a believer. Because I know when you hear about signs, it's just like I had with my mom. It's like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
but until it happens to you, then it's like, oh my gosh, a whole new world opens up.
Yeah.
And so that was our first signs, like tangible signs. And then
Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners! Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on Issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode.
after that, I've realized that I really didn't get a lot of signs for about 10 years. And during those 10 years, I had turned to alcohol to numb my grief. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking heavily, like 4 days a week at least,
Mm-hmm.
and just to numb my pain. And I had been very shy, and drinking alcohol brought me out of my shell. It numbed my pain. It did a lot of things for me at the time. And eventually, I stopped drinking, and I realized that I'd been numbing my pain, and I allowed myself to start feeling those feelings. And I also, grief isn't just the loss of a loved one. I also had some grief around the changes that took place, in my body because of the accident. So I
Mm-hmm.
have some nerve damage on the left side of my face and my shoulder. I have a lot of scars. And, for the longest time when I would start feeling grieving and feeling sad that, I'm not the same as I was. I look different. My face doesn't quite react the same on this side as it does that side. And I would just push it away. And I would say, well, Brian, I'm alive, and Brian died, so I shouldn't feel that. And I think that's kind of survivor's grief, maybe. But
Yeah.
I just felt like because I lived, I have no right to be sad about the changes that happened to me, because here I am alive while my brother isn't. So I didn't allow myself to feel those feelings. And eventually I did. And I said, no, I, I, I do have the right to feel those feelings. And you know what? Brian's right next to me while I'm feeling them. And I changed my perspective too. I instead of, oh, look at these ugly scars, because I have a really big scar on one of my thighs. I broke both of my femurs, and one thigh has a big scar where the bone came through the skin
Mm-hmm.
because it was a compound fracture. And I used to try to wear longer shorts and kind of cover it up, and until I changed my perspective, and I'm like, you know what, these aren't scars, these are battle wounds. And all that I survived, I'm a badass. And I'm not gonna hide this. This is who I am now. And so I've learned to embrace that, and I quit drinking, and with all that, I was able to become more spiritual and get more in tune with my brother. I did, however, even though I didn't get many signs during those years where I was drinking heavily, I did get some guidance, a couple points where I had some very strong guidance that came to me as a thought, but yet I knew it wasn't my own thought. So I feel like before we come to Earth, we kind of have a map. It's like there's a map of certain landmarks we want to hit. Like, I believe we have free will, but there's also like certain things we're supposed to do. And I was in a relationship that wasn't really good for me. And one night at the bar, everything seemed to slow down in slow motion. And I heard in my mind, you don't have to live like this. Life could be so different for you. And I thought, you're right. It was like the slap in the face that I needed to wake me up, because I was bound and determined that this relationship was going to work. And it really helped me see that it wasn't working, and helped me to get out of that relationship. And then there was another point where I needed, I have a mitral valve prolapse. So I was told at age 11 that I'd eventually need open heart surgery to hopefully repair the valve or replace it. And my valve had started to act up, and I had testing done, and my heart had enlarged just a little bit. But they were like, for a woman, they like a woman to hopefully be done having children before she has surgery, open heart surgery, because if they can't repair the valve, they either have to replace it with a pig's valve, which only lasts 6 years, or a mechanical valve, which requires heavy blood thinners for the rest of your life, which causes birth defects. So it can affect your fertility, your options for childbearing. So even though my heart had enlarged a little bit, they were like, well, it's not bad enough yet. So just wait. And at the time I was single and, had never had children or anything. And one day another voice came into my head that said, do it now and it'll be repaired. Do it now and it'll be repaired. And it was like this undeniable, I just knew. I was like, okay, I have to do it now. And, I started thinking, well, isn't anything more likely to be repairable before it's completely broken down? It made sense to me to do it now. And that voice kept coming to me over and over. And so I called to let the doctor know that I was ready to do it sooner than later. But the nurse, she was acting as a gatekeeper, and she was like, no, you're going to have to wear a monitor for the next month, and they're all checked out right now for the following 2 weeks. And I had actually already worn a monitor for a couple of days previously, and the doctor had looked over all my records, but she wasn't allowing it. She's like, no, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wear the monitor. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just was home thinking about the whole situation, and a thought came into my mind that said, call after hours. And I thought, oh, good idea. Yes, because when you call after hours, the team there reaches out to your doctor and says, hey, call this patient. So then you're talking directly to the doctor. And that was not my thought. I thought, good idea the minute it came into my head. So I know that was guidance. And whether it was my brother or my future kids or God or who knows, but I kind of, in my book, I refer to that as divine spirit, because for divine spirit, I include your higher self, God, your guardian angels, your loved ones. It's everybody. All those good people. And so I just knew divine spirit had guided me with that decision. And so I did call the next day, or the doctor called me, and I told him, and he said, call this nurse on tomorrow and get on the schedule, and we'll get you in within the next 2 weeks. And they did. And when I awoke from surgery, my parents were there, and I immediately asked them, was my heart repaired? And they said yes. And it's one of the best repairs they've seen. So that was some guidance I really needed during that time that came to me. But then once I, moved on from that and healed and recovered, I did start to get some more signs from my brother. And one of the really, really amazing ones, I mean, they're all amazing, but one that really stands out to me is the day I found out I was pregnant. I drove up from the town I live in up to Salt Lake City to tell my mom in person that I was expecting. And so we did that. And then on my drive home, I had my iPod playing a compilation. It was a compilation that contains 200 songs, and it's kind of like classic, easy listening kind of stuff. And there's a handful of songs that my family and I refer to as Brian's songs. And whenever we hear them, we think of Brian, and we've learned to ask for those songs and often get them as a sign. And during my drive home, but this is before any of that had happened. So during my drive home, one of his favorite songs came on. It was More Than Words by Extreme. So that came on, and I was talking on the phone to my mom as I was driving, and I said, oh my gosh, one of Brian's songs just came on. And she said, oh, wow, that's neat. And then the next song came on was Kokomo by the Beach Boys. And that was one of his songs. And I thought, oh my gosh, out of 200 songs, here comes 2 in a row that are his songs. Because the rest of the album doesn't contain his songs. They're all just, the Eagles and different variety of music. And I thought, wow. And my mom then said, wouldn't it be incredible if the song Somewhere Out There came on? And I said, oh, that would be so neat, but I don't own that song, And that song was sung at my brother's funeral. So that's one of his songs. And my mom and I got off the phone, but I was still driving. And I thought, let's put this to the test. And I said, Brian, I said out loud, but it really doesn't matter if you say it in your mind or out loud, because they can hear you either way. But I just talked out loud to myself, and I said, if that, thank you for those signs. It's really hard, though, to know for sure if that was you, They were both on the same album. It was on shuffle. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Can you please prove to me that that was you by playing Somewhere Out There next? And so I flipped my iPod off. I turned on the radio station. I flipped it away from the alternative station that it had been set to, and put on a station that might be likely to play that kind of music. And the ads were running. But as soon as the ads stopped running, Somewhere Out There came on the radio with the millions of songs that could be playing at any hour of the day. That one came on next after I had just asked for it. And
Incredible.
I called my mom back, and I cranked up the volume, and I said, Mom, I asked Brian for that song, and it's on right now. And she couldn't believe it.
Oh, amazing. I want to get into the context of the book, but a couple of things that I just want to highlight or what you talked about. The first one was that you said it was 10 years before you really were experiencing signs, although you did receive those couple of things in the midst of those 10 years, correct?
Correct.
Those insights and things. So, I think that's very important for people because, I'm 2.5 years into a little bit more than 2.5 years of losing my son. And I've experienced some things for sure. Some people in the groups I'm in, helping parents heal, helping fathers heal, I I see them on there and I hurt for them because they're searching so hard for signs and maybe not even recognizing them. I don't know, but just the patience to have to recognize that they will come. That's the first thing I would just want to say. And then the other thing is the way you experience them. I mean, they can be so many different things, and there's some great books out there about signs and recognizing signs or accepting that they're signs. And I think that's another element of it, in faith, in the church. I used to say before, you need to have faith and just believe it. It's blind. And so it's similar in this when you experience these things, because like you said, coincidence could be just coincidence, right? And even us who believe this and know this, that we've experienced these things, we still have those moments where we say, okay, got to shake off that ego part, and say, no, it was real. And I believe this. And so more times than not, I'm just so matter of fact about it. And I know some people, when I say it, when I say like, oh, I saw 1111 again, and I see 1111 all the time on the time. And I consider that a message, a hello from Jeff every time. And so, people just don't understand. They think, oh, well, you're looking at the clock, you're looking for it or whatever. It's not that way at all. It happens just like this all the time. I was playing a video game, a hockey game, and it's happened 4 times in the last few times I was playing the game. The time clock goes to 11:11 or whatever in the game. I mean, I know what that is. And other
Yeah.
people, I understand where they come from, and they may think, oh, you're just rationalizing that or wanting it to be that or whatever the case is. But it comes down to a point of just saying, I believe this and I know that that's true. And so, just something else for people to think about out there.
Yeah.
So, what about, so in the book, what is the context of the book? Do you tell the whole story and then what you've been experiencing, or what's the book about?
So the book, this is what it looks like.
Bright
And
days do
it's,
come.
yeah, bright days do come. And it's, so the beginning, I tell it from my perspective. I shared that accident. So I kind of open with, I can't see very well, and I hear my dad's voice telling me what had just happened. And I don't know when this was, probably several days after the accident, because I was on life support and I had collapsed lungs and broken legs and multiple surgeries over
Mm,
several days. And
wow.
so I share that experience and healing, going to the rehab, finding out about Brian's death, returning home to a completely different home than I left. I talk about, you know, I never knew that was the last time that I would see my brother.
Hmm.
And to just kind of treat every time, every interaction with somebody is the last time, because one day it will be.
Hmm.
So treat everything, even you go to your favorite place, you think you'll be back. Just enjoy it so much. Just say it,
Mm,
soak it all in, because you never know when is the last time. So I kind of talk about things like that I've kind of learned because of it. Then I have a whole section called Signs from Brian, and they're all the signs that my family and I have received from him over the years. And, my brother wasn't alive when Facebook was a thing. So many years ago, I created a Facebook page for him where people can go on and see all of his pictures, just family and friends, obviously. They can go on and see all of his pictures and wish him a happy birthday. And I always make sure I do a birthday post and a post on the anniversary of his death date, and just to have everyone remember him. And whenever I would experience a cool sign, or family or friends they would post it in there. So that was kind of my outline for that section of my book, because I had documented a lot of things, and I had documented a lot of the signs in my journals. And I was going to say, when you were talking about when you see the clock at 111, and that's a sign from Jeff, my dad, in the book, I talk about my dad's loss of his girlfriend. She died 3 years ago due to suicide. And it's been absolutely heartbreaking for my dad. But he sees they had a number before she died. Their number was 44. And ultimately 344 was their main number, but 44 was also their number. And in the note she left my dad, she said, look for 44s. And he sees them all the time. He'll look at the clock and it's for something 44. And then he'll look again later. And he's not trying to look or planning it. He just glances over and there it is. The other day he pulled in from wherever he had been, and the mileage left on his car for the gas was 344. And he had just heard a song, one of her songs as well. So he gets signs all the time. And I've told him to, I've encouraged him, write it down, Dad, write it down. And he has a book. I mean, he hasn't written a book, but he could. He has a notebook like this thick, full of all the experiences. So I do encourage people to write those down. And then I have another section where I've interviewed friends and family with signs from their loved ones. And there are some really cool ones in there. And then the very last section, let's see, it's where I talk about grief. I talk about where life took me after the accident and kind of where I'm at now. And then what has worked for me in getting signs, and to encourage readers to do the same. And so I share kind of my main tips for getting signs and what's worked for me. And for me, like, I think being open is the very first thing, to being open that it can happen and having an open mind instead of, oh, that's just rubbish, or, just being open to the possibility that it can happen and trying to be mindful and present. Because if you're constantly, engaged in all these things and you're always listening to a podcast, or you're always just busy and you're not taking the time to breathe and look around you and just kind of be in the moment, you could miss those signs. And I think they're all around us, and oftentimes they're missed. And so those are the two main things I share. But the third main one I share is that over the years I've learned to ask. Because, the signs come and they're incredible. But when you ask and it happens, there's absolutely no doubt. Like with my 82s, I ask for an 82 and I get an 82 that very night. There's no denying that. And I'll do it just for fun. Like when I want to feel extra connected to Brian, I'll say, like, it was probably about a year ago, I said, hey, Brian, give me an 82 again. That'd be great. And a week later, I went to the store, and of all the things I purchased, including, spices from the bins that you measure and all the things I got and the taxes, my total bill was $82. The 82s, it's pretty cool.
Wow.
And so cool. when you ask too, I would recommend, thinking about, you can ask for anything. Like my daughter asked him, I was encouraging my daughter to know that she can ask her uncle for signs. And so she asked him for this cat she had seen once a year prior named Finn, who came into our backyard, and he had his name tag said Finn. She asked him for that. And I even told her, I should know better. But I was like, well, that might be kind of hard. But Brian delivered. She got that cat. An hour later, that cat was in our backyard, and she hadn't seen him for an entire year.
Awesome.
So you can ask for anything, but I really suggest thinking about their birth year, or their favorite song, or their favorite character, or something that they relates to them, I think helps.
Yeah. You mentioned something so important though too about the mindfulness and being present. And I just did a podcast too with someone who works in mindfulness exclusively. And yes, people want the signs and everything, and they may experience one or then ask for something, but then allow themselves to be clouded by all the peripheral things. And if you do that, you're really blocking it all out. And so you're inundated with everything that's around you, whether you're listening to the news or whether you're on social media or whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing to occupy your mind and block all that stuff out is going to cloud that opportunity to come. You still need to take that time and practice and continue to practice. It's work, really. I mean, you got to constantly do it. Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I'm not. And so just be persistent in it and keep yourself open. And those things will definitely come. You're more in tune with it, you're more aligned with it, and you're able to receive it. So,
I agree.
yeah,
And I have an example of that if you'd like to hear it.
absolutely.
So I was driving, and normally I do listen to podcasts a lot. So I'm listening to podcasts or music, and music's fine. But I was just driving and it was quiet, and I was at a stoplight, and my mind, I just started thinking, wow, it's incredible what my family and I have been through with this, with the car accident and everything. And, sometimes it's like a whole nother lifetime ago. And I think, wow,
Uh-huh.
that's, that happened to me. It's so crazy. And I was just thinking, wow, we've been through so much. And our accident happened in 1991. And I look over and there's this man standing on the corner, and the whole back, his whole entire back was 1991 written across the back of his t-shirt. And I just thought, that's the universe kind of mirroring back to me, like, yeah, you're being present. We see you, we
Mm-hmm.
hear you. Here's some proof to just kind of solidify like I was thinking about that. There it is. And I was
Yeah.
present, and it was a good lesson for me in being present, because I could have easily missed that.
Yeah.
And so look around you too and listen to the conversations around you. You might have asked your loved one for like a yellow bird or something, and then you're at a restaurant and you overhear this lady saying, "This yellow bird, da da da," or "My daughter loves yellow bird," or it could be on a billboard, or you're watching a movie and this yellow bird hops in front of the screen. So it's not necessarily that you're always going to see one in real life, but that's what I've
Yeah.
come to know
Yeah,
as
if you
well.
ask for something and then you go and you cloud your mind and you'll forget all about it, and then it could be right in front of you and not even realize it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So awesome, Karen. Karen, I'm so glad too that I mean, I asked you about the signs and things and you gave me some, but there's plenty more in the book, and that's awesome. I want people to
Yeah.
read the book, and we'll certainly have the link to it in the show notes and everything. And so happy to be able to get. We talked, what, about a year ago, probably, when you were in the midst of getting the book going or whatever, earlier this year, and it hadn't been released yet. And so I'm like, I want to have you on when it's released so we can get it out there. So that
I'm
is so
so glad
cool.
we finally did.
I
This
know,
is
an amazing
amazing.
story. I had no idea the background of the story and everything, and wow, I'm just blown away by your experiences and what you've gone through. How are your parents doing? I have to ask that as a parent of losing a child, and how are they
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. They have their days. My mom, she joined a mother's bereavement group shortly after the accident, and that was really, really helpful for her.
Mm,
My dad, he just kind of dived. He didn't really know what to do with himself, so he dove right back into work. And our accident happened on a Friday. I believe he was back to work on Monday.
yeah.
He didn't really take that time to grieve, and so he's had a harder time. And he was my dad's only son.
Hmm.
And and all, not only did my dad lose him, but he lost his sporting partner, all of
Yeah.
the dreams he had for him with their future, and taking him to more games, and getting involved in more sports, and so it's been hard, really hard, and to this day he'll break down crying probably at
Yeah.
least once a week about it.
Hmm.
And then, as I mentioned, he lost his girlfriend 3 years ago, and she died on October 4th, and our car accident was on October 4th, but my brother technically passed away on October 5th. So those 2 days are just really, really
Wow.
extra hard on my dad. But I'd say every day's still really hard for him.
Yeah. Well, the couple of things you've mentioned there and yourself too about the need to deal with your grief. So many people just say, "Oh, well, I'm all right, I'm good," or this is just the way things are or whatever. And I don't know, we can only talk from experience, right? When you get into it and you deal with it, it changes so many things in your journey with it in a positive way, I would say. Um And so it's necessary to get into it and deal with it, and
Yeah,
process it in some way, or get it out for
I
sure.
agree. Yeah, yeah, and I share some ideas for what can help with grief too in my book, like, you know, feeling your feelings and talking to somebody, whether it's a friend or a counselor, to get that verbally, to help it get out of you instead of just
Hmm.
staying inside, and to also like lean into community, find a support system, and to move your body, to try your best to you know remember that, like, remember that your loved one, you will be with your loved one again. I think
Hmm.
that's what helps me, is to remember that, like, death is not an anomaly. We are all going to die one day, and we will all, like, it's just a matter of when. And there's people, it, when people go sooner than later, they just happen to go home before we did. And so thinking of it in that way kind of helps me, and changing my perspective, because the first while, and during that 10 years, I was always like, geez, I only had 9 years with my brother. Like, and it's true, I did. I only had 9 years with my brother. But I try to look at it now as I got to have 9 years with this boy, with
Yeah.
this sweet, amazing brother. And, a year before my brother died, a friend of mine died in a car accident. And ironically, I was in my room crying one night, and Brian came into my room and he handed me this picture. I'll describe it for the people just listening, but I'll show it here. It's a smiley face with
Hmm.
an arrow pointing to it that says, "Keep that face. I hope you
Hmm.
feel better."
Oh.
And so, so sweet. And it's just kind of ironic to me that my brother gave me this message 1 year before his death. And it reminds me to, yes, we can feel grief. We should. We need to feel it. But also, we're here. They had their turn on life, whether it's short or long. We all each have our turn. And right now we're here, and we need to live our lives, and we need to keep that face. And so, when I talk about my brother, I try to smile more often than I cry, and I remember his message to me. And that's something that's really helped me with my grief too.
I think that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of the grief evolving in a
Mhm.
better way. For me,
Yes.
when I don't cry that often about it, but when I do, when I cry hard, it actually feels good. It feels like a connection. It feels positive instead of the horror cry that I had when things happened and everything. So, and that
Yeah.
sense of just immense loss and everything, it's changed now. It's more like a cry of togetherness, really, is really what I feel when I cry now. Like Jeff is more present with me than ever. And so, I look at it in a whole different way. And that's the way things, what things can change in so many ways if you get in and deal with it the way that you really can. And there's many different facets of that, but it's important for people to do it. I encourage everybody, of course, to do it. So thank you so much, Karen. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say real quick, you know, I envision grief as like a glass of water that fills up, the grief fills up, and sometimes it fills up real quick. Sometimes it takes a little longer.
Mhm.
But when it gets to the top, let it spill over, let those tears flow, because feeling really is healing. And over time, every time you cry, you heal just a little bit. And over time, that grief softens. Like you said, it's not that raw grief
Mm.
years later. So it's always there. I still feel it 34 years later now.
Yeah.
But it's not that raw, because when those emotions come, you let them flow. So
Mm. Great words. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate your time
thank
and
you.
sharing your story and your heart with everybody. And of course, everyone can go to her website too. It's author KarinMcLean.com, and her name is spelled Karin, and McLean is McLean. So author KarinMcLean.com, and I'll have it in the show notes for sure. And it's been a great time with you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.